Ryan Wilson. Yeah. He doesn't know this yet, but he's gonna take the job as the Browns GM. He's gonna leave the CBS draft board, and he's gonna be our draft guru, at least for the next 30 minutes. Ryan, the draft capital isn't there at the top of the draft for this team. Is it possible that they can dig out of the hole that they're in with the pieces that they're sitting on right now for the draft?
Yeah, so I'm hesitating because on paper, this team in general looks pretty good. There's some things to fix on the defensive line. We know that. But I think the conversation has to start with the quarterback, right? And part of me wonders, and you guys know better than me, and I was thinking about this the other day, if the Browns had just wished that Deshaun Watson didn't play at all last year, because you don't have to answer those questions about why he's not playing up to the level you want him to, and I get all that. In terms of fixing the team, again, it starts with the quarterback. You have to get the quarterback right, because we could talk about the Jets in the same voice, right? That defense was dominating people. Mike White came in and outplayed Zach Wilson. Now they're looking for a quarterback, Derek Carr, whomever it may be. But if Deshaun Watson, and I asked this question on a podcast I do at CBS yesterday, if you get 65% of peak Deshaun Watson at his time in Houston, this team wins 10 football games, right? And that's the question. That's what you have to work through.
Right? You think 65% of that guy they win 10? I don't see that.
Not with that defense.
What percentage of peak Deshaun do you need?
85 for double-digit wins.
No, I'll give you that.
on the defense.
Yeah, I just need a 65. I mean, I think we got 65% of I think we got 50% of Sean.
I don't think it was 50%.
I mean, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks, 6 games.
Yeah, I thought he was terrible.
Bad. He was bad.
Yeah.
I wish we could get 65% of Deshaun and win 10.
But we didn't.
But I think it's going to be
the Browns
more than that.
didn't. I get what you're saying, Ryan. We could quibble about the exact percentage. The bottom line is the Browns didn't make this trade to get 65% of what Deshaun Watson was, and he's young enough that there's no reason that he shouldn't be able to get back to the player he was. I personally think, and there's no way for me to know this for sure, I think a lot of this is mental hurdles that he's got to get over. He put himself in this position. Only he and these women know exactly what happened. But however much he's actually responsible, there's a certain percentage. Who knows what the exact percentage is. But however much, it doesn't matter. He's got a mental hurdle to get over. It seems pretty obvious that he has lost that edge, that moxie, that confidence, whatever it is, and if he can't get over that, then he'll never get back to being that player. That's what I think, at least.
No, I think you're right. And I said this during the season. You look at that contract, the guaranteed money, the $250+ million, whatever the actual number is, that money to that player based on what he did in the past, that's Josh Allen, that's Patrick Mahomes' money. And you can say that's unfair. Say it. But that's what you're expecting when you sign a player to that sort of deal.
You're 1,000% right.
So you expect that production. So the fact that we're saying we're quibbling over 65 or 85% tells us where we're at in the conversation and how short of the mark we are right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue. We talked about how important he is to the Cleveland Browns and how important it is to get him back to where he needs to be before we can get to compete with other teams in the AFC. That just goes to show me that you got to have a receiver. If you look at the Browns roster right now at receiver and you compare it to some of the elite teams in the AFC, they don't have a better receiving core than Miami. They don't have one better than Buffalo. They're not anywhere near close to what the Cincinnati Bengals are. And I don't even count what the Chiefs do because they got a cheat code of Patrick Mahomes. He could play with me and you. So my thing is, if you want to maximize Deshaun Watson, don't you have to pony up and say, I might not be getting the best value for an Asian receiver in the trade. I might overpay for this guy in free agency, or I might have to package something to get an elite receiver. Do you think receiver is a position that is important just because Deshaun Watson is that important?
Yeah, I'll turn the question around in this way and say, what happened to Josh Allen when Stephon Diggs showed up? Did he get better? Right? So, I mean, that's the thing, because Josh Allen, he came out of Wyoming. He was only completing half of his passes or whatever, and people were concerned whether he was going to be the dude or not, and he started making progress, and the next thing you know, Stephon Diggs shows up, and his productivity skyrockets. Now, some of that, obviously, is Josh Allen continuing to improve, but it helps to have someone to throw the ball to. Now, Amari Cooper was good last year, but you got to have a plan B. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I thought he did some good things, but I thought Anthony Schwartz hasn't quite lived up to expectations. He's a track guy coming out of Auburn and all that. But I thought that they were hoping for more for him at this point. Jarvis Landry clearly, didn't work out. He's now gone. But I think if you can find a wide receiver that opens things up not only for Amari, but makes life easier for Deshaun as a reliable weapon, whether it's through the draft, and that's more of a crapshoot because we don't know what you get necessarily unless you get Jamar Chase, or whether it's overpaying for a wide receiver that will bring value, there's certainly something to be said for that. Look, man, you overpay for the quarterback. Don't stop now. Don't think that he's going to fix it by himself.
Just keep digging, man.
When he's been struggling.
Ryan, obviously there's some veteran wide receivers the Browns will be looking at, but if let's say they go wide receiver where they're picking in the second round, Mike put up some names there on the screen. When you look at the draft board or your draft board, who are some names in the second round that you think could potentially be, as G mentioned before, what T. Higgins has become, maybe not the exact type of receiver, but obviously T. Higgins made an immediate impact as a second round wide receiver.
Bring that kind of production.
Yes, bring that kind of production. Who do you see as possibilities for them there?
The interesting thing is this draft class of wide receivers is pretty shallow, which is weird to say because we've seen the wide receivers come up through high school and college and be dominant, especially the last 2 or 3 draft classes. So after Quentin Johnson and Jordan Addison, things get a little interesting. But a player like Jalen Hyatt, he may end up going in the first round because of his pure track speed, and maybe that scares you off because of Anthony Schwartz. But he was a touchdown machine last year for Tennessee. And if he falls to 42, I think that's the first time the Browns are on the clock. That feels like a pick. You're like, I feel great about this because you have Amari on one side and you just have guys running go routes all day and no one can cover Jalen Hyatt, and that opens things up for everyone else in the middle of the field, whether it's Njoku or Harrison Bryant or whoever.
Do you think he'll slip that low, though?
I don't. I'm just trying to be optimistic, but I got some other names for you.
Oh, Ryan, you're my kind of guy, brother.
Ryan had Hyatt going 25th or 26th.
Maybe the Browns could trade up. So. It's possible.
But here's the thing.
He could.
There are some other guys to keep an eye on. So Zay Flowers is electric out of BC. He's a fun player. Josh Downs out of UNC is electric. He's a fun player. These guys have return ability as well. They can line up inside or outside. They're going to be smaller. They're going to be sub 6 feet. They'll be about 175-ish, maybe lighter for Zay Jones. But there are players like that. Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati is another player who are just electric middle-of-the-field players who can also win deep, but they don't have the size of a Jalen Hyatt and certainly not of a Quentin Johnson. They're not going to be T. Higgins 6'3", 6'4".
Right.
But they're 6 feet and under guys who are great in small areas. You can't catch them in the open field, and they're touchdown machines, yak machines on you could throw them a slant or you could throw them a post, and either way they end up in the end zone.
Ryan, we've been focusing on wide receiver, and that is an area of need.
Thank you.
But they currently have a good wide receiver. I know you need more. But to me, the glaring area is defensive tackle because they don't have anybody there.
Talk about it.
So if you're advising the Browns, and I know it's all who's available at that point, but are you spending more of your time focusing on the interior defensive line or wide receiver? Where are you going in the first round if you're the Browns?
Second
round.
Second round,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, with their first pick.
That's right. So I did a 2-round mock draft incidentally earlier this week,
Right.
and I had them going with Siaki Ika, the huge 340-pound, there he is right there, defensive tackle out of Baylor. Now, he's a 2-down guy, so that's probably why he won't go in round 1, but he can be dominant. And, you might get Danny Shelton vibes, and that may be good or bad for you. But
Bad. Very bad.
here's the problem. Both
take
wide
that, though,
receiver
right
and defensive tackle are light in this class in terms of depth. So that's a concern. Javon Dexter's another name that you look there, the 33rd team had. He's a good football player. He's first-round talent that sometimes the focus isn't there play in and play out. And Mozzie Smith's another player. He's as nasty as they come, but you'd like to see a little bit more consistency. But in terms of high-end athleticism, freakish athleticism, those guys, Javon Dexter, Mozzie Smith, check those boxes. So when you get down into round 2 and even into day 3 with this draft class, the depth at defensive tackle, you're doing some trade-offs, right? You're not going to hit a home run at pick 42 at either position necessarily unless you get lucky. But you have to ask yourself, what's more important, getting a wide receiver at 42 and fixing the offense as much as you can, or plugging all the holes along the defensive line? And you may lean defense early. Of course, depending on how free agency works out, you may lean defense early in the draft, given how hard it was for them to stop the run last season.
I'm with you. Address wide receiver and free agency.
Let me ask about that guy, that Siaki guy. What is his size? What
340.
So let me ask. So with the game being a lateral game, you don't worry about him because we had Phil Taylor in here last week, and he was talking about like his size defensive tackles aren't that good anymore because now this game is lateral. How do you think he would pan out if the game is going, east and west?
No, that's a great point. And here's the thing. He's a two-down guy. So now you have a guy that's on the field, coming off the field on third downs, and then what? You spent the 42nd pick on a guy that's plugging it for the run. I get it. And I do a podcast at CBS Sports with Rick Spielman, and that's his concern. He said, listen, I like Ika, but I ain't taking him in the first round because I got to take him off the field. And here's the thing. There are a lot of guys who are 310 to 280, go down to 280, who play on the inside, who are twitchy as all get out, who move well laterally, who shoot gaps all day long, and they give you that in terms of their arsenal, but they're not going to win. They're not going to stand up to double teams. They're not going to be shedding blocks consistently and getting off blocks to make plays in the A gap and against the run. So that's the trade-off. But I take your point. I mean, a guy like Elijah Cansey out of Pitt, that's a guy, if you're interested in someone who is extremely twitched up playing inside, go watch Elijah Cansey. He has some day two potential. Team's a little concerned about the weight. I think he played at about 275, which is extremely light to be playing, 0-3 technique or whatever inside interior. But again, he gives you a different sort of flavor of ice cream when you're looking at a defensive tackle and the things they can do. To your point about being a three-down guy, getting off blocks, moving laterally, sideline to sideline, and you see that in players like a Cansey, for example, out of Pitt. By
the way, something that Danny Shelton was excellent at, which we can't, maybe this guy will be too, he was great at jumping on the pile. He was a champion. Nobody better at jumping on the pile.
For Danny.
Plays over. Here comes Danny Shelton jumping in.
Well,
he was great at that. Now, linebacker is another position in need, Ryan, for the Browns. And I feel like more and more that's a position where you'll often see guys, great value, third, fourth, even fifth round, because the position's been devalued. And so there's players at those positions, I think, that are good players, maybe not superstars, but good players that drop. Do you agree with that? And will that be the case this year?
Yes and yes. I absolutely think so. I think Drew Sanders, who's sort of a freakish athlete out of Arkansas, Alabama transfer, has a chance to be a first-round pick. He's 6'5", 232 last time he was weighed and measured. So there you see him right there. Whoever's running the graphics is hitting grand slam after grand slam, by the way.
This guy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Other names to watch. So Trenton Simpson, fantastic. Like, he checks every box physically of what you want. The problem is the lack of awareness around him, right? I was talking to a scout that said he plays like he's looking through a straw, and that gives you a perfect encapsulation of he's sort of looking through blinders. He doesn't see everything that's going on. But
that sounds like a perfect Browns player.
We got some of those guys right now.
We good. We can't have
Browns
that.
have plenty of those guys.
We can't have that.
But I'll give you some names that you might want to keep an eye on. So Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati, he has a chance to be a late day 2, day 3 guy. Physical, and look, here's the thing. You guys know this. These off-ball linebackers these days, they're struggling to get up blocks at times because they're all about 225, 235 between there. Sometimes they're running around blocks, and I get it. That's how it works. You don't have Ray Lewis anymore out there patrolling the middle of the field. Cam Jones out of Indiana. This dude will hit anything that moves. Undersized, but he flies around, and he is a lot of fun. We saw Jack Campbell on the graphic there. He's a little more old school, but again, a playmaker, day 3 guy. And I'll mention Noah Sewell, Panay's brother, who didn't quite live up to expectations. I need to dig around and see if maybe he was battling injury last year, because sometimes when these players aren't playing like you want them to play, there's something going on that we don't know about. But again, another really good athlete. You can get value perhaps late day 2, early day 3, because he didn't live up to the August conversation about him being in the first round.
Is it, could it be this thing for the Browns? I look at it, they need a linebacker, they need a D tackle, receiver, and also an edge rusher. We haven't talked about the edge. Is the edge rushers a little bit more in depth? Is there more edge rushers in this draft you can get? And possibly, if the defensive tackles that they see on the board when they're drafting aren't there, could they potentially say, well, look, we know we need a D tackle more than an edge rusher, but we need to get a replacement for Clowney, and we like the edge position better as far as the talent.
Yeah, listen, this edge class, now we finally come to an agreement where you can find depth up and down the board. So if they happen to be there at 43 and the defensive tackle or wide receiver, whomever isn't there, and you want to take an edge rusher, you're going to have picks for days. And there are going to be a lot of guys that you might like. And here's a name to keep an eye on. And he weighs 290. We'll see what he weighs next week at the Combine. Tuli Tuipulotu. out of USC. He plays outside. He can play a little 3 technique. He played at 290. At least he was listed at 290. He plays like he's moving at about 260.
I like
and
that.
He is fun. And, again, you have the versatility along the defensive line. They can do more things than, say, a Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith might be there, had the pec injury, a little undersized by edge rush standards, probably sub 240. So he does one thing well, and that's rush the passer. He doesn't drop into coverage a lot, but he gives you that. Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame is 260, 6'5", still learning the position, as strong as an ox, uses his hands well, needs to expand on the pass rush moves because he's a former tight end. He hasn't been playing very long on the outside. But there are a ton of guys in that range that should be there. Will McDonald out of Iowa State, another slender, long-armed, physical leverage freak in terms of winning consistently that way. Needs to get a little stronger. But these are things that you expect these young men to do. They're 21, 22 years old. They're going to gain weight. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get better with better coaching. But there will be a ton of guys in round 2 and even into day 3 if you're looking for edge rushers to help your football team.
Ryan, let's talk about the Buckeyes here a little bit,
Go Bucs.
and where you see some of these guys going. Some of the, obviously there's a ton of talent. We didn't talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba when it comes to wide receiver. We had Dane Brugler on last week. He was kind of down on him a little bit. And you didn't mention him for the Browns' second-round pick. But so what's your thoughts on him and some of the other Buckeyes in the mix?
You know what's funny? Like Dane is the OG of draft analysts, and he knows more than anyone, and he works as hard as anyone out there. And I'll say this. Jackson Smith and Jigba, it feels like when you're in the draft media and covering the draft, it's what have you done for me lately, right?
Yeah.
He played 3 games, had 5 catches, had the hamstring issue,
Yeah.
and all those things are put in the back of your mind when you're watching Marvin Harrison Jr., when you're watching Jordan Addison, when you're watching Quentin Johnston. 2 weeks ago, we were in Phoenix for the Super Bowl for work, and Garrett Wilson stopped by, and I was chatting him up after our segment, and I said, so what do you think of Jackson Smith and Jigba? And he said, let me tell you something. He was the best player on our team at wide receiver in 2021. And you go back and look at the stats, led the team in receptions, led the team in yards, ahead of Chris Olave, ahead of Garrett, ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., all guys who were either first-round picks or are going to be first-round picks. And that's important to remember, right? Now, is he as athletic as those players? No. And I want to see what he runs next week, and that's going to be the big thing, assuming he's healthy. If he runs sub 4.5, okay, let's talk, because the tape is the tape. And that's not going to change. If he runs a 4.65, then people are going to have the issues that they have. But I think he's a first-round guy. I think he helps the football team immediately, and I think he does a lot of things. He's a very smart football player, and while he doesn't have the athleticism of a Garrett or an Olave, it's hard to get away from what he accomplished in 2021 on that football team.
If Marvin Harrison Jr. was in this draft class, where would he go?
Man, if I'm the Bears, I might take Marvin Harrison Jr. for all.
You know what? You'd be crazy not to, man.
That's what Dane said, too, last week.
I know.
Yeah.
He has the pedigree. He has the tape now.
He's
he made
stud.
some catches last year that were just absolutely incredible.
He could sit out all next year, and nobody's going to hold that against him.
No.
What he did against Georgia, that whole myth about up north receivers or speed, no, he almost single-handedly beat them by himself.
Hey, Ryan, real quick before you go, I need to get a Bengals question in here. Bengals picking late in the first round. Obviously, they're in a position to just go best player available, certainly. I've heard a lot of talk about tight end. I thought Hayden Hurst did a pretty good job. I know he's a free agent, but I don't mind if they bring him back. But there are some if they brought in some young stud tight end to add to their offense already, that would be interesting. Clearly, offensive line, they still need guys for the future. What are you predicting for them late in the first round?
Yeah, typically when they do these mock drafts, offensive line has been a target. Anton Harrison is a guy, the left tackle out of Oklahoma, that I've had going there occasionally. Broderick Jones out of Georgia. I've had teams tell me that Anton Harrison could secretly be one of the best offensive tackles in this class, so maybe he goes higher than that. But in terms of those tight ends, this tight end class is deep as well. And, Michael Mayer is the guy. But we were the Senior Bowl, man, and there were teams talking about Luke Musgrave as being tight end 1, and I get it, but I'm like, Michael Mayer feels like he checks a lot of the boxes. Luke Musgrave isn't going to block anyone, but typically you're not drafting a tight end in round 1 to block someone.
Right.
And a name that I love and is a lot of fun to watch and is just scratching the surface is Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Now, Brock Bowers is the dude at Georgia, right? But you watch Darnell Washington, 6'7", 265-ish. He might run in the 4.7s, sub 4.7s next week. He is a huge middle of the field catch guy, red zone guy, and he blocks like he's an offensive lineman. So he gives you that added benefit. And if you're the Bengals, you can use all the blockers you can take to help Joe Burrow, because that offensive line, while they've restocked there, continues to struggle in terms of keeping Joe Burrow upright.
Yeah, they need help there.
Yeah. Thanks,
Ryan,
Ryan.
hey, great stuff. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. You can check out his podcast. He is the draft expert on CBS. Terrific stuff. And if anything big happens from the draft combine next week, we hope we can pick up the phone and call you, because I know your eyes are going to be peeled.